recording. We're live.
We're live and recording.
All right. Well, welcome members to our town hall meeting today about the Cornerstone work that was done some months ago. Welcome to the session. We have about 125 members signed up to attend. We are recording this session, so it'll be available hopefully very shortly, where we can publish that to the whole membership along with some more information. You will have the ability while you're watching today's presentation to submit a question. Probably best to hold off on the questions until a little bit further into the presentation, as some of your questions may be answered. And Ben, if you want to describe how to submit a question.
Sure, yeah, on the GoToWebinar control panel that defaults to the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll notice there's a panel that says questions. You can click on the arrow on the question line, and that'll open up that window. And then there's a field where you can enter your question, and we will answer all those questions in the order that they're received during the Q&A portion of the town hall.
Great, thanks, Ben. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gail Fisher, the chair of the Strategic Planning Committee.
Thank you, Tim. Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the Strategic Planning Committee in Stonebridge, I would like to welcome Roger Heitbrink, the founder and principal consultant of Cornerstone Decision Support, to our town hall meeting today. SPC had the good fortune to work with Roger on the facility planning study. Roger brings extensive experience and expertise in strategic planning and consulting to all types of clubs, club communities, and HOAs. In addition, he has held management positions up through general manager within the club industry. As a consultant for more than 30 years, Roger has conducted approximately 800 opinion studies and planning projects. Roger works from West Palm Beach, spends most of his time with Florida clubs and communities. Finally, SPC would like to thank all who participated in the development, implementation, and completion of this important work. And now I turn this over to Roger to share the findings. Thank you for being here, Roger.
Thank you, Gail, and good afternoon to everyone who's online, and thank you for attending. Let's start with the agenda for what we're going to cover today. First, as we started the project, we did a few focus groups. I'll talk a little bit about what we learned there. Then I'll get right into the quantitative study or survey, where everyone had a chance to weigh in with their opinions. We'll go through the sample, who participated. We'll talk about the improvement priorities that they ranked, that said these were the areas they thought were most important to improve. We'll talk about the support or opposition to 16 different concepts that were tested. Then we'll talk about the funding and how willing the respondents were to fund the things that they thought were important. If you participated, you knew that you had an opportunity to offer a comment. We'll talk a little bit about those, and then finally I'll do a summary of the findings so that we can wrap it up and then go to question and answer. If you notice on the bottom of your screen, on the bottom right, there's a number. It's a page number. So if you could have a question about a page, just write that number down in your notes, and we can go back to it and address it once they come up. Let's talk about the focus groups. They occurred on January 10 and 11, quite a while ago, but they were very spirited and very involved. What we did was to take the roster divided by men and women, and then we divided each of those lists by 3 different age groups to get a balance of members in each group. And then we took those lists, randomized them, and then administration had invited the people on the list, starting with the first one and continuing to go until the quota was achieved. We did 3 groups of men and 3 groups of women, and 44 individuals participated in total. The group really was an unaided thought process, kind of a brainstorm. I said, let's talk about specific areas, and you tell me essentially what you would like to improve, if anything. And that's how the interview evolved, and we probed a lot of respondents, and we probed a lot of ideas and thoughts to better understand what they were describing. the findings from those 6 group interviews then were used in addition to some of the insight from the 2019 member satisfaction survey to develop the survey instrument that you received. The focus groups revealed basically headlines including more casual and social rewarding grill room and integrating the terrace to become more of a part of the grill room. Another response was to expand the bistro and to increase the square footage under air conditioning so it becomes a year-round venue. Expand the fitness center for more equipment and classes. The card players and meeting goers had suggested that they need more space for simultaneous meetings, so an expansion of multi-purpose space. There was support for some of the proposed golf course renovation that was presented in April of 2019, but not necessarily all of it. And then finally, there were discussions about a bigger resort-like pool with lap lanes. So these guided us in the creation of concepts that the Strategic Planning Committee and myself and Tim worked on to test with the survey instrument. The survey itself had 3 objectives. We wanted the members to be able to rate which facilities were important or unimportant in their perception to improve. Secondly, as I described earlier, we had 16 improvement concepts. We asked the respondent to indicate or rate their support or opposition to making those improvements. And then finally, we asked them what their willingness or reluctance was to fund the improvements that they thought were most important to them with a monthly capital payment at 4 different dollar figures. Let's go to the sample profile. That's a clear picture or profile of who responded to the survey. 1,520 members were given the opportunity to log on to the survey, and 840 responded, which gives us a 55% response rate. Member numbers were used to access the survey, and when I analyzed the member numbers, it revealed that 72% of the households had participated in the survey, which is a very good percentage. We were looking for a valid sample that had at least a plus or minus 3 percentage point error range. Well, the 840 gave us a little better error range of plus or minus 2.3, which gives us an opportunity in this survey to analyze the differences between different demographic segments such as gender, age, years as a member, and months of residency. Speaking of gender, the sample or the membership has 51% men and 49% women, and the sample, interestingly enough, had identical percentages. The records for age in the club are incomplete, so we don't have a comparison to the census for age, but the sample revealed that 58% were younger than 75, 25% younger than 68. We asked members to indicate the number of years that they've been a member at Stonebridge. This is the sample. 18% have been a member for fewer than 5 years, all the way down to 28% have been members for 20 years or more. And when we compare that to the census, you can see that slightly fewer than are 5 years or less as a member participated, but slightly more people who have been members for 20 years or more participated. The middle groups were pretty close to the census. So we have a little bit of an undersample of the newer member and a little bit of an oversample of the older member. And this is pretty common in a survey of this type. Members who've been members for 11 years or more are likely to reside in the community. Let me rephrase that. Members who've been there for fewer than 11 years, these first 2 columns, are more likely to be seasonal residents residing in the community for less than 8 months a year. So let's look at seasonality. we asked how many months per year do you reside in your Stonebridge home? 63% are seasonal residents with 7 or fewer months per year, and 37% are more long-term residents of 8 or more months. This is a very common profile of a Florida club. We asked the member to indicate their frequency or use or participation in 6 different club areas. Starting with these 6, 48% said they use the bistro 2 or more times per week, but golf exceeds that with 61%. Fitness center at 36%, a third said they use it 2 or more times per week. Those are the 3 most frequent usages. When it comes to volume, the bistro now picks up another segment of once a week, and then 22% 1 to 2 times per month. So the bistro reaches more of the sample members than any other area, but very close to the main dining room and grill room. Golf course at 83% combined is a pretty high percentage. Typically, we're seeing in the 70s, maybe in the high 60s in some particular cases. So 83% is a high participation rate of the sample. Fitness center at 59% is right where the Florida average is right now, and the multi-purpose rooms and pool at a lower percentage, which is very common. These are the members who said they do not participate in any of those areas. The survey asked the following. The board needs your opinion about facility improvement priorities. Please rate how important or unimportant you feel it is to improve each of the following club facilities to enhance your membership experience and strengthen the appeal to home buyers. These are the particular areas that we asked the respondent to rate. And you can see that the scale is very important all the way to very unimportant. 51% and 50% said the bistro and golf are very important to improve. Another 26 and 22%, followed by the undecided at 9 and 12 for the top 2. 4 and 5% said somewhat unimportant to improve. And then a small percentage, 10 and 11%, said very unimportant to improve. When we look at assigning numbers to each of those responses, we give a very important a 5, somewhat important a 4, all the way down to very unimportant a 1. And when you average the responses by the number of respondents we have, we get a mean score. These are the mean scores, which show separation between the improvement areas. So 4.02 and 3.96 are statistically very close together, but they're stronger than the 3.62 for the grill room, 3.51 for fitness center. These are somewhat common in surveys of this type, which are evaluating priorities for improving fitness center or for improving facilities. Typically, food and beverage is at the top. Before all the 16 particular improvement concepts, the survey said, please rate how much you support or oppose the following facility improvement recommendations identified in the recent member focus group interviews. This is particularly for the 2 for the dining room and grill room, and you can see the score, the scale is now strongly supportive versus strongly opposed. Extending the terrace received a combined support of 50% compared to 30% for opposed. Modifying the grill room bar area to become more of an indoor-outdoor social environment garnered 61% support compared to 21%. So you can see the difference between the 2 mean scores suggests that the grill room is a higher priority and more important, and they're more supportive of improving that than extending the terrace. Yet the terrace had more than 50% support. Support was strongest among members younger than 75, members for fewer than 20 years, and seasonal residents of 8 or fewer months per year. The bistro had 3 different concepts that were tested, starting with increasing the overall bistro capacity, including expansion of the kitchen. That was the strongest support indicated for any of the 16 areas, with a mean score of 3.85 and 71% combined support. A little less support for increasing seating capacity under air to make it a 12-month operation at 58% support compared to 26% opposed. And then finally, creating more inviting bistro bar with a pub sports bar environment, just a little bit less with 53% compared to 26% opposed. The strongest support was among those members 68 to 74, newer members of fewer than 5 years, and seasonal residents of 8 or fewer than 8 months per year. The least support was among the members for 20 or more years. We had 5 concepts tested for the fitness center. The strongest support was shown for expansion of the capacity for additional strength and cardio equipment with adequate equipment spacing. That received 50% support. Creating separate areas for strength and cardio received 39% support. Adding a second group exercise studio to conduct simultaneous classes and expand class options received 39% support. There was much stronger support, though, from women as opposed to from men. Adding a private room for such activities as physical therapy and massage received minimal support at 28, and the lowest amount of support was for adding a sauna, steam room, and locker rooms with showers. That was 16% compared to 60% combined opposition. The strongest support was shown by members younger than 75, specifically for the sauna and steam room younger than 68. The golf improvement was described as golf course renovation similar to the initial architect's concept presented to the members in April of 2019 to make it more playable, maintainable, and attractive to current members and future buyers. It received a combined 63% support versus a 21% combined opposition with a 3.63 mean score average. There was stronger support shown by members 68 to 74 and those residing in the community for fewer than 8 months. The strongest opposition was from members 20 years or more. There were 3 particular improvement concepts for the pool and deck area, starting with the expansion of the food and beverage service to the pool. That received slightly more support at 39% combined versus 33% opposed, and very similar, enhancing the pool deck area to make it more socially inviting, followed by redesigning the pool to provide lap lanes and more space for water aerobics. That was a combined support of 33 and 27% respectively. Slightly higher opposition for the latter two with 35% and 50% opposition. Members younger than 75 had much stronger support for all 3 of these, as did members for fewer than 5 years. As far as age, members for 5 to 19 were significantly more supportive than those, for years as a member than 20 years or more. There were 2 other improvement suggestions. One was adding dedicated space for meetings and activities such as card games and enhanced classes. That received a combined support of 38 versus 27% opposition. As far as adding bocce ball courts, it received 31% support versus 42%. However, bocce was strongly supported by members of fewer than 5 years and for seasonal residents of fewer than 8 months. Numbers 68 to 74 showed stronger support for a dedicated space for meetings, games, and classes. Let's put them all together and see how they sequence. This is the top 7, and what we're seeing here is the mean score in the yellow column, the combined percentage of support of strongly supportive and somewhat supportive in the green column, and then the opposition combination in the pink column. So as you can see, the strongest support is to increase the bistro capacity, including expansion of the kitchen, followed by the golf course renovation. Modifying the grill room bar followed closely behind, increasing seating capacity under air for the bistro, and creating more of an inviting bistro bar area, these are very common to come up as higher priority because more members use these particular amenities than they do, let's say, fitness or the pool or meeting rooms. And there is a correlation between those who use a particular amenity and how much they support it. The users were much more supportive than the non-users, as you would imagine. Extending the terrace to create more outdoor bar space received at least 50% support compared to 30% combined opposition. The next 9 received support from less than 50%, actually less than 40%, with number 8 being at 39% versus 24% to create separate areas for strength and cardio in the fitness center. All the way down to adding the sauna, steam room, and locker rooms, which had 16% support compared to 60% opposition. And you can see the separation in the mean scores from 3.16 to 2.24. So if undecided or right in the middle is a 3, creating space, separating space for strength and cardio was just slightly above the middle, as is a second group exercise studio. The remainders are very close to undecided and leaning toward less support or more opposition. The survey asked if the facility improvements you personally support are funded by a monthly capital payment, which of the following monthly payments would you be willing to pay for a period up to 10 years? Funding for any facility improvement is not anticipated to occur until the current loan is paid off in February 2023. We gave them 4 particular price options to choose from, and here's the finding. 41% said they would pay $100 a month for up to 10 years, while 14% would pay $150, 11% $200, and 7% $250. So 73% indicated at least $100 or more, while 27%, you see in the yellow bar, said they would pay less than $100 per month. So let's explore that yellow bar a little bit more. When we break it down, the more common categories were 51 to 90, 10 to 50, and less than $10. The most common one in the 51 to 99 was $75. The 2 most common dollar figures written in for the 10 to 50 were 25 and 50. And for less than 9, the most common was 0. But when you average all the respondents together, the average willingness to pay was $110.18, which is very common in this type of a survey. But as you look at the array of different opinions, the average may or may not be accurate. It's just an interesting mathematical formula. When we look at the willingness to pay by their support for a particular facility, there is a strong correlation to the more support that they show for a facility improvement, the more willing they are to pay. For example, those who are willing to pay $150 had a mean score of support for the increasing the bistro capacity of 4.4, compared to those who would pay only $100. their mean score was 3.95. So you can see the statistical difference. The finding for this particular table, which is a lot of words and a lot of numbers, is simply the stronger you support something, the more willing you are to support it with funding. The same thing is true for the bottom 9. As you can see, whoops, go back. As you can see, the green scores are higher mean scores than you see in the blue column or the $100 column. And for less than 100, you see significantly lower mean scores. So that continues to hold true, even though the support for some of the lower particular concepts were minimal. Let's look at the variance of payment by demographics. The members 68 to 74 are more likely than members 75 and older to support or to indicate 250. The 68 to 74, I find in most communities, are the most active age group of members. Members for 5 to 19 years are more likely than those of 20 or more years to indicate 150. The members who wrote in less than $100 were most likely to be 75 or older and members for 20 or more years. "318 members out of the 840, or 38%, offered a comment. Here's the comments specific to women. 154 women offered comments, which is roughly 18% of the sample. And when you look at the 16.9% of the comment themes meaning some people offered more than one theme in their comment. No renovation is needed, 16.9%. Looks like a pretty high percentage, yet it's only representing 26 women. The 5.6% who say costs are an issue is represented by only 8 women. But a variety of comments, useful comments to the Strategic Planning Committee were offered and always become valuable, but very difficult to put your arms around and understand what the cacophony of comments is truly saying. For men, we had 164 men offer a comment. Some golf renovation, 13.1%, reflects 21 men, and 6.3 who said cost is only 10 men. Let's talk about the summary. What can we take away from this survey? First, members consider the bistro and golf course renovation as the most important areas to improve from a priority perspective. From a support perspective, it's strongest for expanding the bistro, renovating the golf course, and modifying the grill room bar to become more of an indoor-outdoor social environment. There's also support, meaningful support, for expanding the bistro seating capacity under air conditioning and for expanding the fitness center to accommodate more equipment. The least support, as we saw earlier, is for adding bocce ball courts, even though younger and newer members have stronger support for it. A private room for physical therapy and massage at the fitness center. A pool redesign, and for the fitness center, adding a sauna, steam room, and locker rooms with showers. Support for improvement is strongest among those who use a particular facility or amenity than it is among non-users, which only stands to reason, but the survey did support and prove that. It's also strongest among the younger members, younger than 75, but in many cases even younger than 68. Support for improvements is strongest among members for fewer than 5 years than newer members, followed by those members 5 to 10 years who were just slightly less, but still stronger support than among individuals 75 or older and with membership tenures of 20 or more years. From a funding perspective, the takeaway here is that 73% would pay at least $100, of which 42% would pay $100 and 32% would pay $150 or more. 2% would pay between $51 and $99, and 22% would pay $50 or less to fund the improvements. The key here is that the survey, both the combined focus group findings and survey findings, is just step 2 that clubs take in several steps to determine how to proceed with the facility improvement process and what the members, interpreting what the members truly want and will support. And that brings us to questions and answers. Gail, back to you.
All right, so for questions and answers, as Ben said before, there's a question tab on the right-hand side. If you don't see that, there's an orange arrow that you might need to click to expand that menu. Ben, do you want to go through any questions? I know there were some questions early on just about the configuration of the meeting and the audio, but short of those, what else do we have, Ben?
We have a first question is from Susan Mulligan, and I guess this question would be for Roger. What is the relevance of breakdown of age?
As we've been showing and talking about here, it's the support for facility improvements is almost club-wide from an industry perspective, strongest among those who are going to be at the club for many, many years than it is among those who have been there for a long time and probably aren't using the club as much. So that middle age group is this more active group, and that particular group had the strongest indication of support for all of the particular improvements, but more so for the top 7.
Okay, next question we have here is from Peter Flato. He asks, is there any way from the survey to know whether members differentiate between the grill room and the dining room?
No, we put those two together as one description. So there is no way other than comments, which there were very, very few, and nothing that I would necessarily draw a conclusion from. Except, let me go add one more thing to that. In the focus groups, the concept was we want the grill room to be more lively and larger to accommodate more social interaction than the dining room, which is more of a formal dining experience. So that was the primary indication.
Okay,
I guess we'll give the members a couple of minutes to get their questions typed. That's all we have for now.
Yeah, that's all the questions for now. Here's another one.
Follow-up question from Susan Mulligan. It says, what is the relevance of breakdown of age and length of residency with regard to concepts, i.e. amount of monthly payments for improvements and pool improvements? If majority desires $100 monthly and only 7% want to pay $250 monthly.
Start the beginning of that question again, please.
Sure. What is the relevance of breakdown of age and length of residency with regard to concepts, for example, the amount of monthly payments for improvements? If majority desires $100 monthly and only 7% want to pay $250 monthly.
Well, this is the in most cases, the younger members were willing to pay more than were the older members. And older, defined by 75 years of age or older. Specific to improvements, there was more correlated to users than versus non-users, and the users for tennis and the pool tended to be younger. So one could draw a conclusion that younger members are more supportive and willing to fund those areas such as tennis, which we didn't do anything with tennis, but the pool and fitness center. So there is a correlation between age and support and usage. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Roger. Next question is from Robert Scuderi. This one's probably more for the board, and Mr. Trowell, maybe you want to tackle this. He asked, what are the next steps?
Okay, the next step is this: the strategic planning committee got this actually got this presentation a few weeks ago from Roger. This is and they've been working on it over the past couple of weeks. And the next milestone is on October 23rd, next month. There is a regularly scheduled board meeting, and so I've asked the strategic planning committee to come to that board meeting and give a presentation on their conclusions from the study and what their recommendations are and what they recommend to be the next steps. You know, whether we need additional material or we need to do some more digging into concepts, that sort of thing. That's what we're asking the SBC to come back and tell us what their recommendations are. The board, if the board will review that, and if they approve it, then we will likely move on from there. As Roger said, and one of the questions said, we're not looking for any go ahead on the major project until we have a vote of the members, though. And that's likely the project go ahead, if there is any project. If that's the decision of the boards, then that would be sometime in February 2023. Then that would be no earlier than. But that's a long way off. We have a lot more work to do, and that's what we've asked the strategic planning committee to do. So there's going to be an email go out tomorrow that Tim mentioned that will have this presentation, the recording of this presentation, a link attached, and a 2-page fact sheet that sort of summarizes what Roger said today. And it also will talk about the board meeting on October 23rd. So folks that are interested in sticking with this subject can come to the link into the October 23rd board meeting for the SBC's recommendations.
Great. Next question is going to be going back to you, Roger. It's from Andrea Kent, and she asks, did the survey indicate whether members were in favor of a golf course renovation?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I got some people blowing leaves behind my window here. Yes, there was significant support for golf course renovation, but in the focus groups and in the comments, there were issues about not all of it. So everyone in the focus groups had different views as to what should be done, what shouldn't be done. So it would be very difficult to draw a conclusion as to where the majority of support for what portions of that proposed renovation were. But there was very strong support from all demographic areas regarding the golf course renovation.
Great. And another one for you, Roger, from Jim Gett. He asks, how do you factor in the needs of future owners based on input from existing owners only? Is the input of the younger members most relevant to that issue?
Well, from what you have inside the gates, yes, they represent probably more similar perceptions to the buyers, especially if they're members for fewer than 5 years who have come in and made choices compared to the competition. But I know that Tim is monitoring the trends in the club industry and as it pertains to the western side of Florida. So there are several surveys out there that are suggesting that not only is golf still important, but may not be as important as it was many years ago, because the concept is for a more comprehensive country club experience with fitness, social events, of course, dining, and a variety of recreational opportunities. So as I've been monitoring it now for 20 years, the only difference I see that has occurred over that 20-year period is they're looking for more of a resort environment with a variety of opportunities for social activities, interacting with members, finding friends, and enjoying those friendships together with various recreational and social activities.
Great. Next, we have a question from Jim Ruddy. This one probably more directed toward the board. And he asks, with the support we have, why would we wait to proceed with renovations when we have a very favorable lending environment? Why wouldn't we refinance what we have left and move forward?
Yeah, let me start with that, and maybe Dave has a comment also. I think the first thing is that we made a statement that we wouldn't engage in another loan until we've paid off the existing loan. So we'd have to deal with that question, because that's what we told members we would do. Now, the Finance Committee has considered the idea of refinancing the existing loan. We still have 3 years left on that loan. We have a very favorable rate on that. Although with the Fed's recent announcement that the late rates are going to stay low for several years, maybe that takes a bit of the pressure off to move quickly. The other thing is, and Tim may be able to talk to this also, even if we were to decide to go ahead, there's still a long lead time to line up. Well, we have to get a vote. We have to have a concept to vote on. And assuming that passed, we've got permits to get and all contractors to line up and all that sort of thing. So there is a lot of work. Even if we knew what we were going to do today, there's still a lot of work to be done. So early 2023 sounds like a long ways away, but it's not in that context. The other thing we have to consider is if we were going to redo the golf course or redo the bistro, we're not going to do that during the season. We'll have to do it during the summer. So that is another factor that plays into the timing of this. Dave, do you want to talk about the financing side potential?
Yeah, I think you pretty well summed it up, Larry. I think in terms of where we would go, I mean, we have to obviously put some scenarios together, and we've kind of done that on a preliminary basis, and we'll go over those at the Finance Committee. But you know, right now it's a guessing game as to what those rates are going to be in 2023. Although, as you said, Larry, the Feds have kind of signaled that the low interest rates could last for quite some time, and that would be obviously beneficial to us. But you know, the key issue right now is we've said, and we need to kind of keep top of mind that we're not going to add any more debt until the existing loan is paid off. So I think that's the overriding issue right now.
Great. Coming back to Roger, we have a question from Ellen Hannon. And she asks, in your experience, are the results for Stonebridge across the demographics of age and support significantly different from other similar communities in Southwest Florida?
No, they are not. They are very, very similar, especially for food and beverage and golf and fitness. Those are the three areas that clubs are making the biggest improvements in. And we see that support here, especially among the newer and younger members.
And then we have a question from John Brown asking, have we considered converting tennis to pickleball?
Yeah, I could touch on that one from an operational standpoint. We actually did a little test run using one of the tennis courts for pickleball. And currently, anyway, noise is an issue with how close Ashton Oaks is. In fact, it was noisy enough that it could be heard from Heatherwood and Middleburg. So currently, with the noise that comes from pickleball, I think having that in the tennis court location would not work.
And then we have a follow-up comment from Jim Ruddy saying that the 2023 rates may not be as favorable. Assuming he's talking about the interest rates on a loan. Dan Graziano asks, do you have a sense of what impact the COVID pandemic has had on the reliability of these findings?
Well, the COVID, in other words, what follow-up impact might they have? It's a good question. Very difficult to answer, but I would assume that by 2023, things will have returned to more of a normal situation, maybe not the old normal, but I see right now, because I do a lot of polls in clubs on how members are reacting to the pandemic and how willing or reluctant they are to use facilities. And as time has gone on, members have become more confident in using the facilities and wanting to come back and having more opportunities available to them. There's still a segment, about 30%, who are very fearful. They tend to be older, more vulnerable age for the disease, and more reluctant to use the facilities. So I think by the time that we calm down a little bit as far as having a virus or having a vaccine, having enough people try and have good experiences with a modified or very carefully orchestrated operation for health purposes, I don't think there's going to be a big impact on it in 2023. But again, I don't have a crystal ball, and I'm very reluctant to say of what will happen, given that very few of us predicted this pandemic and the impact that it's having on the economy and on communities of this sort. But one thing that has occurred in many of the communities I work with is that the confidence in governance and operations that have adapted services and provided new services such as delivery of food and concierge type services have strengthened the confidence that the members have in being within the gates and being in a safer environment than they would be elsewhere. So I think, and there's certain studies that I've read recently that suggest people are moving to Florida and looking for gated communities because they consider it safer than where they are now, not in a gated community. So I think there's a lot of indications that we're calming down just a little bit. Hopefully that trend will continue. And by 2023, according to CDC and other sources, there should be a reliable vaccine.
Yeah.
My guess is I don't think it will have an impact at that time when you take the vote.
Yeah, I think, Roger, this is Larry. One of the thought, and Dan raises a good question, but there was a recent article in one of the club-related periodicals that talked about how people are seeing the club is sort of, clubs in general is sort of a safe haven, a place where they know people, they know they're comfortable with them, they understand how they think, and they're comfortable being around them in this kind of environment. So if that's true, then I think clubs like ours and that have a culture like ours are only going to be stronger as people look to sort of hunker down in a more comfortable environment.
One study shows that there's 95 people moving to Florida every day. And another study suggests that they're looking for gated environments, which doesn't necessarily indicate a country club environment as much as it does just a gated environment. But of those who are looking for clubs and a gated environment, you really have a corner on that market.
Okay, next question. We have another question from Susan Mulligan, more pertaining to finance. And she says, so if only 7% of members want to pay $250 a month, and that group is identified as, quote, younger, and use the tennis courts and pool more than older members, do you then conclude that all members will have to pay that amount?
Absolutely not. The formula that many communities, and I've done a lot of work on the east side of the state, almost $1 billion of improvements through different projects, have indicated that there is a dollar figure that members will support. And there's always a few members who will support an extremely high dollar figure. But the issue is not serving that particular segment. It's just that shows the enthusiasm of that particular group. I think the wiser assumption would be that it's a more reasonable figure and something that is appropriate for all members. So as a board is a fiduciary operation, they need to make that decision based on what works for the majority, the vast majority of members. So certainly I wouldn't think that a $250 fee is supported by this survey.
Roger, can I just comment on that as the strategic planning committee is working with the finance committee to take a look at this. We want to bring forward the object of this at the end of the day is to bring forward a great plan that members will be willing to pay for. And we know from the survey that the average right now is in the range of $110. And even some members were not supportive of that in the survey, but they may be when they see the plan. So I hope that everybody doesn't assume that we're going to try to bring some plan forward that is at the maximum of the range, because we're taking all the input that we have from Roger and some other cuts of the data that were done and just taking a look at it. I think where the younger people become important is that they're more supportive of some projects that, you know, there were some differences between younger people, older people, less tenure, more tenure, that prefer some improvements that are different from the other groups. And so we just need to marry that all together to bring forward the best plan at the end of the day.
Great. Question from Eunice Sherman. This one's directed toward the board. And she asks, based on preferences from the survey and a ballpark estimate of willingness on amount people are willing to pay, assuming the board will continue to do some due diligence on items that receive the most support in between now and 2023?
Yes. As I mentioned, the Strategic Planning Committee will come to the board on October 23rd with their plan to move forward and the next steps that we're going to take. And it's our intention to pick this up, and that's why, you know, we met with Roger last month. We're meeting with the members this month. We're meeting with the board next month. We're going to keep the forward progress on this, considering what our members would like to see. But we're definitely going to continue to work on this. So my recommendation is, if you're available, come to the October, or dial in to the October 23rd board meeting to hear the Strategic Planning Committee's high-level plan for continuing the dig into this.
Great. Next question is from John Weiss. And he states that 800 members at $100 per is almost $1 million a year. The last loan will be paid off in 2023. What was the amount and term length of that loan? Also, it would have been interesting to know what membership felt about that decision.
Who are you directing that to?
Yeah, well, I'll take it, and Dave, if you will follow up and clean up after me. The last loan was $6.2 million, I believe, for 10 years. And that the final payment on that is made in February of 2023.
And I'll just add that that payment right now that everybody is making through 2023 is $73.75 a month. So just keep that in mind relative to the 100, 150, 200, 250 that was in, from the survey. I would also add that if you take a look at the $73.75 a month that everybody is paying right now, that was decided and back in 2012. So in theory, if you take that amount and you inflate it 3% per year, you're at $102 a month. So that first column of $100 a month isn't that far off when you look at it in light of what we're paying right now, based on decisions from 2012.
Great. Next, I have more of a comment from Jim Ruddy Jr. He says, more of a statement. I'm hoping that the board is not considering input from members on what we renovate regarding the golf course. Members are not golf course architects. So.
Yeah, let me just say to that, the strategic planning committee will make their recommendation at the next board meeting. And I suspect the golf course will be one project, and anything else they propose doing will be another project. And we will proceed to work with the architects and work through the golf committee and the people that get the responsibility to pull that project together and implement it. I believe the golf course project has been getting member input. But of course, we recognize that the architect is the expert in that. But we have been providing input, as I understand.
Great. Next question is from Steve Deneen. He says, my question is for Roger. He says, first, thank you for your time today to help us Stonebridge members to understand this survey. Second, in your professional opinion, based on other Naples clubs, how important is it to do major improvements at Stonebridge, and why? Thanks again.
Well, I think it's always important to keep pace, but your membership is significantly different in demographic and culture than every other club out there. There's more affluent clubs, there's less affluent clubs, but all of that is somewhat irrelevant to who are your paying customers, who are your members who own this brand and own this particular set of amenities. So I think it's important to first pay attention to the competition as to what are people buying, but then secondly, how is that relevant and correlate with what our members want? So you have paying customers, so to speak, who are footing the bill and should be the priority as to what they want. On the other hand, as members grow older and toward the end of the trajectory, they use the club less, they're less supportive of new activities. That's not a reason necessarily to hold off on renovation, but it's a reason to be equitable in balancing the perspective of all members, which I think this survey has done. The question becomes, are you competitively positioned relative to clubs that are within your particular competitive set? That's something that when we do strategic planning is very important to say. We're not comparing ourselves maybe to the most elite club out there. We're comparing ourselves to how the buyer looks for a specific value proposition. Given that, where are we relative to the competition, and are we a better choice? That's largely, I think, how to look at combining that piece of information with your choice for what renovations you make. Golf will always be important to Florida. It just isn't as important as it was many years ago, but it's still very important, not only from a recreational perspective, but from an ambiance and a vista and a residential perspective. We know that members are looking for multiple opportunities to socialize. Social is still the core of every club. So finding your particular demographic and psychographic segment is the objective of marketing, and then differentiating yourself from those clubs that are closest to you is the objective. So I think you have to balance all those elements when choosing which renovation, which improvements are most important for Stonebridge.
Right, and I agree with everything you said, Roger, and let me just add another point. The purpose of this facilities planning exercise is two things. One is to improve the experience for our members. We're doing it for our members so that they enjoy even more living and playing at Stonebridge. The second purpose of it is to stay competitive in the Southwest Florida bundle golf community marketplace. And we've talked at a number of board meetings over the past few years about our peer communities. There's 9 other communities that are just like us here in the Southwest Florida. We're not comparing ourselves to Gray Oaks or Pelican Marsh. We're comparing ourselves to these 9 other communities. We compare ourselves financially and amenity-wise. That's where we think, with regard to staying competitive, that's what we're trying to stay competitive with. And we've gotten this feedback from the realtors. We've had realtors in on a couple of occasions and asked them to tell us what are buyers looking for. When you take buyers here, where else do you take it? What other clubs do you take them? And it varies, but for people that look in bundle golf, they're looking at basically us and our peer communities, the peer community. So that's where we're trying to stay competitive. But number one is to improve the enjoyment of the club by the members.
Great, and Mr. Deneen just had a postscript for his question stating that he is in favor of the improvements. Also, we have a follow-up question from Mrs. Mulligan regarding financing, and I think you touched on this, Mrs. Fisher, but she had a question about what the monthly payment would be and if it would be the $250. If you want to touch on that again.
Sure. I think once a plan is created and that members will have an opportunity to vote on it. So I think when we design a plan, we need to keep in mind what the average amount is that people wanted, and that's part of the calculation, but it's not going to be the board that decides what the members are going to pay. It's going to be the members. So I think my guess would be that it probably won't be in the range of $250 because only 7% of the members voted for that. But I think at this point it's premature. But I would say in my view right now, highly unlikely that it would be $250. I mean, we want to stay in something, it's hopeful that whoever carries this plan forward designs something that is a great plan that will be in the range of what our members told us they are willing to pay, and not the high end, most likely, or the low end. But it will be in that ballpark. I hope that answers your question, because it's going to be up to the members to vote on what they're willing to pay.
Right. And we have from John Brown. He says, not a question, but a comment. He says, you are all doing a great webinar, very informative and well run. Thank you. So thank you, Mr. Brown. Another question from John Weiss. He asked, what is the rate on the current note, please? Thank you.
So that's 3.5%.
Great, and then we have a comment from Eunice Sherman. She says, before meeting closes, just want to take this opportunity to thank board and club management for the phenomenal job they have done and continue to during these very challenging times. So thank you, Mrs. Sherman.
And that looks like it for questions. So thank you, Roger, for your time. We really appreciate it. And again, for the membership, we'll have this as well as some more information from the Strategic Planning Committee published out tomorrow. So we'll send that out to the whole membership.
Right, and Tim, also we want to remind people that the next step in the discussion of this, it will be at the board meeting on October 23rd. It'll be a virtual meeting just like this, and instructions on how to log into that will be sent out prior to the meeting. But we encourage everyone to join and hear what the Strategic Planning Committee has to say about their thoughts about what the next steps ought to be.
Excellent. Well, thank you all very much.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Tim. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
Thanks,
My
Roger.
pleasure.
Thanks, everybody, for your participation and cooperation. Thank you.